Have you ever noticed your dog doing something that seems completely random until you realize they only started doing it after watching you? Maybe you stretch when you wake up, and suddenly your dog starts stretching too. Maybe you sigh when you're tired, and a few seconds later, your dog lets out a dramatic sigh of their own. Or perhaps you have a strange little routine before going to bed, and somehow, your dog has started following the exact same pattern. At first, it looks like a coincidence. But dogs are incredibly observant animals, and sometimes they don't just watch what we do. They start incorporating pieces of our behavior into their own lives. And one of the strangest things your dog may copy is something you probably never thought they were paying attention to: your emotional reactions. Think about what happens when something unexpected occurs at home. Maybe you hear a strange noise and immediately stop what you're doing. Your body becomes still. You look toward the sound. Your expression changes. Your dog notices all of it. Even before they understand what made you react, they can recognize that something about the situation has changed. So they look at you, and if you appear relaxed, they may relax. If you become excited, they may become alert. In other words, your dog can sometimes use you as information. Researchers studying dog behavior have found that dogs are highly sensitive to human body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, and emotional cues. Your dog doesn't need to understand the sentence, "Everything is fine," if your body is saying something completely different. They're constantly collecting clues from you. But here's where it gets really interesting. Dogs can also develop habits around the people they live with. Imagine that every morning you get out of bed, stretch your arms, walk toward the kitchen, and make coffee. Your dog watches this sequence day after day. Eventually, your dog may begin treating your movement as a signal that something is about to happen. They may stretch when you stretch, walk toward the kitchen when you do, or suddenly become excited because they know breakfast is coming. You might think your dog is simply copying you, but technically, something more complicated may be happening. Your dog is learning the pattern, and once that pattern becomes predictable, your behavior becomes a kind of communication. This is why dogs can sometimes seem like they have an almost supernatural ability to know what you're about to do. You haven't said walk. You haven't picked up the leash. You haven't opened the door. Yet your dog suddenly appears beside you. Why? Because you probably gave them dozens of tiny clues without realizing it. You stood up differently. You looked toward the door. You changed your walking speed. You reached for something you normally grab before going outside. To you, those movements are meaningless. To your dog, they can be a complete sentence. And there is another form of copying that dog owners often find fascinating: the contagious yawn. If you yawn and your dog suddenly yawns too, it can feel like they're imitating you. Dogs have been shown in studies to sometimes yawn in response to human yawns, although the exact reason is still being investigated. It may involve social responsiveness, attention, emotional connection, or simply the contagious nature of yawning itself. But here's the important part. Don't assume every copied behavior means your dog is consciously thinking, "My human did this, so I should do it too." Dogs don't necessarily imitate us the same way humans imitate each other. Often, they're learning associations, responding to cues, or becoming synchronized with the routines of the household. And that distinction makes their behavior even more fascinating, because your dog may not be copying the action itself. They may be copying the meaning behind the action. Let's say every evening you sit on the couch, take a deep breath, and relax after a long day. After watching this happen hundreds of times, your dog may begin approaching you during that same moment, settling down beside you, and becoming calm themselves. They haven't necessarily copied your breathing. They've learned that this particular sequence means the day is slowing down. My person is relaxing. I can relax too. This is one reason dogs can become so deeply synchronized with their owners. They live in our routines. They watch our movements. They hear our voices all day. They learn what happens before meals, walks, bedtime, visitors, car rides, and even arguments. Over time, your dog can become extremely good at predicting what comes next. And sometimes the strangest example is something incredibly small. You scratch your arm. Your dog scratches themselves. You walk into another room, and they follow. You lie down, and they settle down. You become excited when someone arrives, and your dog becomes excited too. You grab a blanket before sleeping, and your dog immediately heads toward their favorite sleeping spot. None of these behaviors automatically prove that your dog is consciously imitating you. But together, they reveal something important. Your dog is paying attention. A lot more attention than you probably realize. In fact, one of the easiest ways to discover how closely your dog watches you is to change one tiny part of your normal routine. If you normally grab your keys before leaving, try picking them up and then sitting back down. Watch your dog. They may immediately react because they've learned that keys usually predict your departure. You're essentially breaking the prediction your dog has built in their head, and that can reveal just how much information they extract from your everyday behavior. Your dog isn't reading your mind. They're reading your patterns. And after living with you for months or years, those patterns can become incredibly detailed. They may know the difference between the way you stand when you're about to leave and the way you stand when you're simply getting something from another room. They may recognize the sound of your "I'm going outside" footsteps. They may even recognize the tiny movements you make before you reach for their food. That's why your dog can sometimes seem to know what you're thinking before you've done anything obvious. They're not psychic. They're observant. And here's the part that makes this surprisingly emotional. Your dog may be learning from you because you are one of the most important sources of information in their world. When your dog watches you, they're not just watching a random human walking around the house. They're watching the person who controls many of the things that matter to them: food, safety, attention, play, affection, walks, and comfort. So if your dog starts picking up little pieces of your behavior, it may simply be part of how they adapt to life with you. You become part of their environment, their routine, and their expectations. And eventually, some of your habits may become part of theirs. So tonight, try something simple. Don't teach your dog anything. Don't call them. Don't give them a command. Just observe, stretch, and see what they do. Yawn and watch their reaction. Change your normal routine and see whether they notice. Sit somewhere unusual and see if they follow. You might discover that your dog has been quietly studying you this entire time. And the strangest behavior they copy from you may not be a trick at all. It may be a tiny piece of your everyday life that they've learned to recognize as our normal. Because sometimes when you think your dog is simply following you, they may actually be showing you just how